Good morning, beautiful people. We are live.
The sun is rising, the sky is blue. Good morning, Grand Risings, let's see what's new. It's that time of day for Sonia and crew. Good morning, Grand Risings. It's time to wake up with Sonia Poulton.
Good morning, beautiful people. How are you? That was a little bit abrupt, wasn't it? Happy Monday. It is Monday, the 2nd of February. It's 1 minute past 9 a.m. GMT. Welcome to Wake Up with me, Sonia Poulton, journalist, broadcaster, troublemaker, everything that you can humanly imagine in one little dynamic package. Oh, yes, indeed. How are you? Welcome to Wake Up, the show that knows we have been lied to so extensively and on so many levels that it's difficult to know what is true and what is false, but not around here. I created Wake Up because having spent over 3 decades in mainstream media, I couldn't take the pig swill that passes for news anymore. So I decided to do it myself. That's why I say we do news different around here. And you know why? Because someone had to, and that someone is me. Thank you for being here. I very much appreciate your support. You people are tremendous. How are you in the comments? Good morning, Kathy. Kathy is in Malta. Lovely. Good morning, Mr. Dunham. How are you? And Cheryl and Maria and Boop and Lisa and SMG and Glennis. Grand rising to you, Glennis. Thank you all for being here. I very much appreciate it. Wherever you are receiving us, whether you're on YouTube or Rumble or on catch up on Spotify. Thank you. Morning from Norfolk. Morning, Rhonda. Hi from Edinburgh. Hi, Diane. How wonderful. Good morning, Randy and Synchronized Soul and Kenneth and the whole crew and DJ Marcuson. Sorry about that abrupt ending to your wonderful music, Marcuson. Merry Monday, one and all, said Bethany. Love the sound of that. Love the sound of that. So what is on Wake Up today? Well, it's a potentially big week for Lucy Letby, the former neonatal nurse convicted of murdering 7 babies and the attempted murder of 7 more. Helping me to unpack the news and events this week is midwife Paul Golden. Looking forward to that. I'll also be joined by author Dr. Neil McCrae on the modus operandi of the mass manipulators. We've seen it all, haven't we? Certainly over the last 6 years. And we'll be joined by psychotherapist John Henden, who will be talking to us about the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, their problem with grooming gangs. Only it might not be the problem that we all think they should have with grooming gangs. Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, Martin. And good morning, Nightcap Lover. Big love to you too. And what else are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about Noah Donohoe inquest. We're going to be talking about news and events of this week. The Epstein files, the latest documents. Yes, they are horrific. Yes, they are damning. And the shocking thing is that there is still worse to come. Yes, indeed. And my fear is that this drip, drip feed is just really to kind of acclimatize us to the madness that has been taking place. But honestly, the whole world should be in no doubt whatsoever now that some of the leading people in our world are indeed either compromised or they are themselves abusers. We'll also be looking at your shout where you get a say. And I will be looking at this book, Voiceless No More, sent to me by a viewer. It's about dealing with narcissists in the family court system, where there is a plethora of them. And I'll also be talking about the far right, who are just frankly plain wrong half the time. And most of it is to do with misinformation. I don't like any extremes. The far right are as bad as the far left, as far as I'm concerned. And thank you again for being here. Rhonda says, should be arrested, not just Ghislaine. Isn't it just so ironic, though, Rhonda, that the only person who has actually been arrested is a woman? I can't help but feel there is some sort of sexism and misogyny in that. Right. First of all, let's look at the news before we bring in our first guest. This man, anybody familiar with this man? His name, of course, is Steve Wright. And last month, a judge ruled that the jury can be told about previous convictions of this man. The trial of Steve Wright starts today at the Old Bailey. He is accused of killing 17-year-old Victoria Hall in Suffolk. And Steve Wright is, of course, or has latterly become known as the Suffolk Strangler after he murdered 5 women, I think the majority of them being prostitutes in Ipswich in the 90s. Awful, awful man. And in fact, in 2006, that was when he was convicted. Wright has pleaded not guilty to the kidnap and murder of Victoria Hall, as well as the attempted kidnap of another woman in Felixstowe in September 1999. Very sad state of affairs. Of course, I can't say very much about it because it's a live case, but I just wanted to make you aware of it. This is also an extremely sad state of affairs. Morning to Stephanie and others who have asked me to follow this. This is the inquest, which continues into the death of 14-year-old schoolboy Noah Donohoe from Belfast, Northern Ireland. He disappeared in June 2020 and was sadly found 6 days later in a storm drain in North Belfast. I began covering this right at the beginning in 2020. Very controversial case. I've always been extremely heartbroken for Noah's mum, Fiona. Bless her heart. She's fought long and hard after years of delays and preliminary hearings. A full jury inquest finally kicked off this month. Key developments from the first 2 weeks of testimony include witnesses describe seeing Noah cycle naked through North Belfast on the day he disappeared. One witness initially thought it was a Father's Day prank, and the court heard from witnesses who saw Noah fall from his bicycle earlier that evening while he appeared uninjured and jumped up quickly. Some witnesses noted he looked startled or embarrassed and left his coat behind, but there was no mention from the witnesses of a brain injury, which is what the police have pushed forward. And witnesses contradicted, as I say, this long-standing police theory that Noah had suffered a major head injury during the fall. And friends and teachers described Noah as an exceptionally intelligent and 1 in a million student. The inquest explored his interest in psychologist Jordan Peterson's book, The 12 Rules for Life, and messages he sent about his mental health and taking risks in the week prior. There was also, at the end of last year, new CCTV footage which emerged. The coroner released footage showing Noah leaving his home in the early hours. It was approximately 3:30 in the morning on the day he vanished. He returned about 30 minutes later, barefoot and without his headphones. And Fiona quite rightly said, why wasn't this released before? You know, it was quite a shock to her, bless her heart. Noah's body, as I say, was found on the 27th of June, 2020 in a storm drain covered by a metal grill that was not padlocked. An autopsy concluded the cause of death was drowning. A man was jailed for 3 months in 2021 for stealing Noah's rucksack and laptop on the day he disappeared, though police stated there was no link to Noah's death. His mum, Fiona, has conducted a long and extensive campaign for truth, a sustained campaign for a full and fearless investigation, questioning the police service of Northern Ireland's handling of the case and the use of public interest immunity certificates to redact information from the inquest. One of Noah's best friends, Jay Tierney, told the inquest on Monday that the 14-year-old was excited for the future in the days before he went missing in June 2020. He described Noah as eccentric, but not in a bad way, and unpredictable, saying the pair supported each other during the COVID-19 lockdown. He said they went on a long walk around Belfast on June the 20th, the day before Noah went missing. Noah chatted with him about Jordan Peterson's book, but he would not tell him what it was called because he felt Mr. Tierney didn't need it. That's kind of a little bit curious and mysterious, but there you go. The jury, as I say, heard evidence from several motorists who had seen Noah fall from his bike, and they absolutely contradicted what the police were saying. And it has to be said that throughout this, the police's behaviour is highly questionable. And that is already being explored at the inquest, and it needs to. But the inquest has heard from a number of Noah's friends. And also from eyewitnesses, including Kerry Fraser, who had been at her partner's house in North Belfast the evening that Noah left his home. Her statement was read to the court. She said she saw a male riding past the house. She said he was totally naked. I thought it was a man who had had too much to drink on Father's Day and was having a prank. He was tall and had an afro hairstyle and was black. He was sitting down cycling and did not appear to be distressed, although he was cycling quickly. I got up and went to the window and looked out, but he was away. I thought he must have gone into one of the houses. So where was he going? Hopefully, much more will be unpacked over the coming weeks. The inquest had been subject to some disturbance initially when Joe McCriskin, the coroner who had been in charge of the pre-inquest proceedings, recused himself from the inquest, and the coroner ordered that no details of the reason why he had recused himself should be published. And it was and if it was published, then it would be in contempt of court. So quite controversial in its own right. And the inquest into Noah's death continues. I sincerely hope that poor Fiona gets some sort of closure, some sort of answer about what has happened to her precious child. Absolutely damning, damning. Talking about damning. Yes, little George, I do think that the date is relevant. June 21st, of course, is it's the summer solstice, isn't it? Interesting time. I walked past this chemist the other day. I don't know if you can see it. It says now offering flu vaccinations for 2 to 3 years old. Did you know that flu vaccination profits are declining? And so they're now pushing with all their might onto babies and toddlers. So there has been a decline. Particularly for GP practices and at pharmacies. And this is due to higher vaccine costs and lower supplier discounts. Pharmacies can claim £10.06 per flu vaccine and £8.70 for COVID-19 vaccinations. But the flu vaccines are declining in part, I should imagine, because people are waking up to what's really going on. And so now they are absolutely pushing them on children. And I stood outside that pharmacy and I put my middle finger up because I can't help myself. I cannot help myself. Yes. Tell them to stick it up there, says Alien. I agree with you. Absolutely appalling, appalling stuff. It's unconscionable. Can't even get my head around it, what these people are prepared to do. Big Pharma greed is incredible, Drumstick. I mean, that is just absolutely the reality of it. Yes, indeed. So I hope you are all right. And well, and I don't know what the weather is like where you are, but it has been chucking down here. Government got your child. See, Brad, that's always been the plan. The plan has always been that the state becomes the parent of our children and makes those sorts of decisions. And that's why it is absolutely vital that as parents, you are as clued up as humanly possible when it comes to any sort of medical intervention. Yes, indeed. What does Dreech here mean? Shug, does it mean it's peeing down? Is that what it means? Voting is insane, says Brad. Marco, did you love the fact that I stuck my middle finger? I cannot help myself. I'm incorrigible. Everybody knows that about me. Right, I'm going to bring in my first guest because we have lots to chat about and I don't want to waste a second. Kids come first, said Mustard Mischief. I absolutely agree with you. Couldn't agree with you more. Let's welcome him in. Paul Golden. Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Hi, Sonia. It's so refreshing to have your dynamic energy challenging everything.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. You are, of course, the midwife mediator. Paul, tell people a little bit about your day job.
I trained originally in law, then I worked in nursing, intensive care with adults, children, then babies. That led me to midwifery. I worked in and out of hospitals in the UK, New Zealand, Australia, Asia. So I had a wide experience, and I, because of the legal background, ended up helping with employment cases, regulatory cases, and also civil medical negligence, and then criminal cases. And I got asked as expert witness in various cases, sometimes by the police. Usually I have to say they wanted somebody to sing from their song sheet and agree with them. They didn't want an independent-minded person. And sometimes for the other side, it could be a family or a practitioner. So I'm semi-retired now. I'm giving advice clinically and legally in cases, including in Russia. They put people in jail there. There's cases all around the world. But I've been very focused on Lucy Letby because I worked as a neonatal nurse for decades. And that could be me. It could be any of us sent to jail because a baby dies, not if a baby, when a baby. They always will be baby deaths in an intensive care unit. And anybody can be blamed for it. And you shouldn't have to defend yourself because there's no proof that you did it. And that's probably part of what's happened in Lucy's case.
Exactly that. So Lucy Letby, of course, as you mentioned, that is exactly what we're here to discuss today. Lucy Letby, former neonatal nurse, convicted of the murder of 7 babies and the attempted murder of a further 7. I've, in my lifetime, in the last 30 years, as an investigative, haven't been an investigative journalist all that time, but as a journalist, Paul, I've never seen such a groundswell of opinion that says that this is a potential miscarriage of justice. It's very significant what's going on. Why is this week so significant in some respects for Lucy Letby, Paul?
Well, before I mention this week, there's one simple word. Is it logical? So the whole case is illogical. There's no logical argument. So it could be simplified to that. The onus and the burden of proof is on the prosecution to prove it. Yes, they managed to persuade a jury. Let's focus on then this week. There's loads of things happening. So it's actually a year ago that Mark MacDonald, the barrister representing Lucy, presented the case to the Criminal Review Commission, and that's got its own slowness and underfunding, and we'll see what happens with that. But this week, on the 4th of February, begins the coroner's inquest. It appears that will be a private inquest to start with, and that some months later, maybe September, it will be a public inquest. But the private one includes the interested parties, and those people are usually the family members of whoever has died. In this case, 7 babies they're looking at. And it can be anybody who's potentially blamed for those deaths. So Lucy Letby did not have any legal representation in the Thirlwell inquiry, that public inquiry, bit of a farce with a narrow terms of reference. And that was wrong. She should have had, because people just keep referring to her, blaming her, saying assumptions, and she had no defense. In this case with the coroner's court, she does have a defense. She is legally represented. But if she is, what about other people who did medical negligence, like the doctors? Because people are not taking it seriously that the doctors had any medical negligence, or that the management failed to have proper infection control mechanisms on the neonatal unit. It was absolutely dire. So many illogical things that they would be mixing up drugs to go in an IV line or an umbilical line in areas that had very terrible sanitation. So this week they begin that, but also this week is the Netflix documentary. We've seen headlines, some people will have noticed, that the family said this was an invasion of privacy for them, and it was. And it just adds to a characterization of the police winning at all costs. And at that time, the CPS went along with the police. Now there's like a falling out between the police and the Crown prosecution. In fact, a public falling out, which is very rare and unusual. That usually the police investigate a case, they present it to CPS, who say they will or will not take it. There's 2 standards that they have to meet. One is the evidence is likely to convict. And that's what they took some years ago and did the case against Lucy, but this time they refused. The second standard is it has to be in the public interest. And that's curious because there's an in-between thing. When we had the first batch of conviction against Lucy Letby, a year later, there was a subsequent case that hadn't been sorted out. And they said, okay, we can do another case. Even though it will cost the taxpayer and the public funds a huge amount of money, they determined that it was worth doing. It was in the public interest. But the same decision makers, it may be a different head of the Crown prosecution in Cheshire, have decided that the police have failed to meet the evidentiary test. So that really throws into question the first one. They're all saying it doesn't, but it does. Because if the first one met the evidentiary test, it didn't. There never was clear evidence that she did anything wrong. It was all circumstantial, as we know.
It was all circumstantial.
Yeah.
Can I let me just comment
Please.
on this Netflix doc, because the problem about the Netflix documentaries is they tend to solidify a narrative. They've also been known, documentaries have also been known to get people freed from long-term prison sentences. So it shouldn't be underestimated, but it's looking increasingly like it's coming down on the side of she's guilty. Of course, until we see it, we don't know. But we do know what her parents have said, as you say. And some of it is really shocking. They've actually been quoted as saying that this is a complete invasion of privacy. There is footage of her being arrested from her bed. And the parents have said, this is likely to kill us. Let us bear in mind, whatever anybody thinks about Lucy Letby, her parents cannot be held responsible. And so this is it's really damning stuff. It sounds really invasive. The police have been on a mission, haven't they? No doubt about it. In fact, recently there was talk that she may be charged for further crimes, but that's now been thrown out, hasn't it?
And that's what I was saying. The public fallout between CPS and the police.
Right,
the police,
got you.
They're so terrified of looking wrong and bad. So if we look at other miscarriages of justice, quite often the police not only knew that somebody didn't do something, that they've even manipulated statements and suppressed evidence. So the Judith Ward case, they knew within a few days she was innocent, but she spent almost 20 years in jail. And so that's why the public energy is here to say, not again, not with Lucy Letby, you know, the Guildford 4, the Birmingham 6. And those statements that some of them signed and made were coerced by the police. When the police later, some of them stood trial, most of them never do, cases collapse. So nobody's ever accountable. So if in life, I'll be a bit philosophical, everything's fear or love. So if we're all very loving and help each other and do the best and admit our mistakes and learn from them, that's okay. If we're frightened, we start to control the narrative. We're trying to control CPS. In this case, the police are doubling down on everything. And they've come out criticizing the CPS decision, which you just don't do. So why would they do that? It's fear. It's fear that they're wrong. They've made mistakes. And instead of admitting and owning up and fixing anything, they're doubling down.
It's interesting also that the cop who arrested Beverly Allett also became known as Angel of Death. He's come out and said that Lucy is the victim of a miscarriage of justice. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I say it's unprecedented, the amount of people who are putting their head above the parapet on this one. So that should surely be something to be listened to when somebody with that sort of background says that.
I think even justice ministers, the health minister, Jeremy Hunt, have come out. Leading statisticians, Jane Hutton and Richard Gill, and you've had on your show some other statisticians as well, neonatal specialists, we've had Shu Lee and his team. It is unprecedented. Even commissioners that review criminal cases have looked at this, not formally, but informally, and said, this is crazy. And it's weird that then the police have a choice, you know, fess up or just double down. And here's an odd thing. In judicial reviews, that's where a High Court judge will look at a coroner's decision. Now, if I presume everybody's doing the best they can, they're all good people, we're all learning the best life lessons we can. That's a great assumption, except my experience of coroners, and especially dealing with babies, is that they hide things. They just want to get through their work. So let's hope the words of perhaps a Leonard Cohen song, that the crack is where the light gets in. Right. That in the Thirlwell inquiry, they were not allowed to criticize the conviction exactly, but facts came to light that really shine a light on Lucy Letby's innocence and shine a lot of light on the doubt of people that gave evidence because they changed their evidence. In the coroner's court, they can also have facts come to light, even if they're not allowed to question the conviction. And I'm hopeful that it's inevitable, because there's so many inconsistencies, even from the main so-called expert witness for the prosecution, who's changed his mind about the method of Lucy allegedly killing babies. But also JRAM and Dr. Ravi Jairam, Dr. Stephen Brewery, their evidence is very inconsistent, as it would be, because it's not true. Even CPS, when they put forward that she was there on a certain date and time, and she wasn't, and the door swipe analysis was reversed.
Right.
They had such crucial evidence wrong. And I keep reminding myself to make the point that not only another documentary, Netflix, is coming out. Amanda Knox has a documentary. She interviewed me and many other people for hours. and she's doing a series of documentaries that start in February. And Amanda Knox herself had a wrongful conviction, was in jail in Italy.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with you about Amanda Knox, so I don't want to get into that territory. It's going to take us into places that we don't need to go, Paul. But I take your point and knowledge. Let me ask you this: some questions coming in. Become Conscious Now says Lucy Letby was present in quotes when all the babies died. Why do you think she is innocent? Please explain.
Well, as I said, on one of the occasions, they said she was there for dislodging a tube or when a baby desaturated, and she was not there. And they had built quite a lot of the case saying she was there. And saying that the death stopped when she moved off the unit, that was a spike of deaths. There were particular problems with those, unfortunately, sad situations for those babies. And they really moved the level of the unit down. And that's what really saved future babies. Critically sick, premature, very small birth weight babies went to Liverpool thereafter. That's the thing. That's the coincidence, not that she was moved off the unit.
Right. And it's very much everything's framed around her. So people who are not familiar with the case within the detail that you are have been told certain things about her, obviously, that she confessed to these killings, that she was always around, she was always on duty. And it's been it's almost like the police and the media have worked hand in hand, like, of course they have. I mean, the media has largely been against her for the most part, but starting to change, right?
Sadly and tragically, particularly the mainstream media like the BBC, and somebody wrote a book Unmasking Lucy Letby. One of her main themes was, oh, she didn't show any emotion sitting in court, therefore she's evil, she's like a witch, really. And so we've had this don't question the narrative, don't question the authority, the state. This used to be in our subconscious like don't question the church, and that's transferred church power to state and legal institutions. We need to question legal institutions, but we don't have a framework. And the recommendations put in place decades ago have never happened. So all the previous miscarriages of justice, there's an estimate of well over 500 known miscarriages of justice currently in the UK. And very few of them will ever even get to the CCRC. They're just in jail for either life or very long sentences, and they will never get out. So a few of them get public attention like this Lucy Letby. And the good that can come from that is let's look at our systems. Let's look at the coronial inquest. Is it fair, transparent and open? I've known of cases where a doctor has said to the coroner, nothing to see here. It was a surprise death, but it's not an unnatural death. So the coroner went along with that. And it was only when the family went to the High Court that the High Court reminded all coroners, you must investigate surprise deaths, unexpected deaths. It doesn't mean they're unnatural deaths. They may be a natural death, but they're unexpected and they must have an investigation. So the arrogance, and sometimes I think it's the education. If you've trained as a doctor or trained as a lawyer, sometimes there's an entitlement and an expectation that your word is not going to be questioned. And we need all to question ourselves and have our colleagues, our friends and our peers question each other. The key focus is evidence. And we mentioned earlier, it's only circumstantial. There is no actual evidence. Writing notes saying, I'm a terrible nurse, maybe it's my fault, maybe I killed them, is part of a psychotherapy, a conscious streaming of thoughts that any of us could write in a private diary. How bad would we look if people looked at our private thoughts? It is not evidence. It doesn't meet the threshold to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. If I say Sonia has a dog and it just bit me, and she doesn't even have a dog, and we carry on with the narrative, and I get an expert witness to look at my arm and I've actually bitten it, that's basically the ridiculousness of this case.
Right.
It's circumstantial evidence, no real evidence.
Jay says Lucy Letby was the witch trial of our age. Very well said. I feel that she's a scapegoat. I definitely do. At the very least, the CCRC should recommend to the Court of Appeal that this should go for appeal. And there's a problem with that. So what about the Thirlwell inquiry? When are we likely? Because weren't we supposed to hear something last year?
You're absolutely right to bring that up. There's another report due out again this month. So this month we've got the coroner, we've got the documentaries, and we've got Thirlwell. And Thirlwell, as I said, accidentally provided new facts, and those facts can be evidence. It's definitely an unsafe conviction. She should be released while the legal arguments are analysed. The idea of her having another trial it's basically impossible. So the other option is to quash a conviction if it's really unsafe. And that's what one does and has done in the past and should do in this case. But if you tried to have a retrial again, who would be the expert witnesses for the prosecution? What would their arguments be? Because we've had all the other sides so clear and so well referenced and based on facts and evidence that it's just storytelling for the prosecution. There's no evidence.
It's going to be a big month for Lucy Letby. I mean, I'm very interested to see the outcome of this because, as I say, I think the response to her and the way people have moved around her is unprecedented. I simply cannot imagine a time when somebody who has been potentially subject to a miscarriage of justice has had the response that Lucy Letby has. So it's going to be very interesting indeed. Anything else you'd like to add before you leave us this morning?
The final thing is, I think we've often seen in the coroner's court, they have a civilian. And in the case of Cheshire, they had a wonderful person, Stephanie Davis, and she had expert training in psychology and in forensics.
Right. She was on with us. Yes.
Yeah, she worked with New York police. So she's very knowledgeable, but she was a bit of a whistleblower and they got rid of her. It's usually a civilian. They've replaced her with a detective inspector. And when people have asked to be included in this current review, that inspector has said, no, you're not in it. It's not the coroner making the decision, or it doesn't appear to be. And that's exceptional. That's never happened in British justice system. Right. So we've got the police protecting the police instead of, and that's what's going on at the moment for this coroner's inquest. So let's hope the coroner has very good standard of ethics and openness and transparency. But at the moment, it actually looks like a secretive event that's being controlled by the police to do limit the damage to their professional reputation. Just reminds me of the whole post office thing. They spent hundreds of millions protecting their reputation.
Exactly.
People died. There were suicides, and everyone thought that they were convicted rightly when it was all wrong. And here we've got the police just hiding things and not letting people see the truth.
Right. And being overzealous about it. I'll never forget the video they made on her conviction. Really weird stuff. Again, really unprecedented behavior, like really weird stuff. Let me just read you this comment. I think this kind of sums up the tone in the live chat today. Marco says, how can a case with such doubt and mounting evidence which contradicts their conviction still warrant the accused to be kept in jail? Innocent until proven guilty. It feels highly unfair. And indeed, and I think the take home point for everybody is that Lucy Letby's convictions are circumstantial. That's the real important fact, isn't it, Paul? Listen, Paul, always appreciate you joining us with your great clarity on this case. Truly appreciate you. Paul Golden, everybody, midwife mediator. I think I've already put a link in the description where you can find out more about Paul. Is that one of your books, Paul? Give it a plug.
Yeah.
Come on, let's have a look at it.
There is a second book coming out soon. This is lots of evidence from the point of view. I'm also a parent of premature babies, so I've been in it, I've worked in it, and I've got lots of different angles and dealt with so many cases. But as I say, there's cases all around the world that I'm researching and dealing with.
Good man.
Not just in the UK. And I'm glad we didn't mention Melania's Netflix thing, but it just shows how Netflix works on a money basis. And what's going on with Netflix and Lucy Letby, is it all about money?
Very interesting. Very interesting point there. Thank you for throwing that in. Thanks, Paul, says Boaty McBoatface and Glennis and all of them. Take care too. Paul Golden, everybody. Take good care of yourself. Wonderful to have him with us. Wonderful to have him with us. I've got Lucy Letby in my face. There it is. Very odd case indeed. And I'm not someone who just immediately goes, oh, they've got it wrong. I look at the facts and I actually believe they've got it wrong. And the overzealous nature of the police is just really weird. And what Paul was saying is absolutely right, that when the CPS decided there were no further charges, the police came out and were like, that wasn't the result we wanted. And the police all the way along the line have been very clear that Lucy Letby is their woman. Yes, indeed. Thanks, Paul, says Robert. Right. If it's on Netflix, I know what I think, said Sunut. But love Hooli TV. I love that. Hi, Sonia. I don't think we line politically, but love your show. Thank you. I appreciate that because I hope that this, first of all, this is not an echo chamber. I try not to. My guests are not necessarily people that I always agree with because I think that's a really bad idea and very boring. Who wants that? But my guests are sometimes people I agree with. And in fact, my next guest, he's written this incredible article and I agree with it almost word for word. What about that then? Let's bring him on, shall we? Let's bring him on. Let me just find him. Here he is. Here he is. Dr. Oh, here we go. Dr. Neil McCrae. How are you, Neil?
Very well. Thank you, Sonia. Lovely to see you again.
Lovely to see you. Cracking article that you wrote. I said I don't always agree with what my guests have to say, and you and I have, I think, had some disagreements in the past politically, but this article that you've written, I think, is a fantastic piece. It's actually 10 modus operandi of the mass manipulators, and I think that it should be printed and laminated and posted through letterboxes all throughout the country. That's what I think. And it's brilliant. You're literally telling people what to look out for, right? And so let's go into it. Let's cover as much of it as we humanly can. You talk about how, quite rightly, we've been immersed in this behavioral psychology program, and we saw that, didn't we? During C-19, they were using our money, taxpayers' money, in order to be able to coerce us and deceive us and manipulate us. And you've put together essentially this 10-point plan, which will enable us to watch what they're doing. And I think that knowledge truly is power, isn't it? And none more so than when we're being manipulated. So I want you to pick some of your favorite manipulations from this. And if you don't want to, I'm quite happy to throw some at you.
Well, thanks for that opportunity. I mean, the very first in that article is something I described as the dual narrative. And if I just may make this important point at the outset, is we're all being fooled. We're all being manipulated. None of us are impervious to the tactics of mass manipulation by the sort of behavioral psychologists who know how we think and know how we latch on to certain ideas. COVID-19 was the perfect illustration, I think, of what I call the dual narrative. And I don't expect all of your audience to agree with me here, Sonia, or even necessarily you to agree with me. But I came to the conclusion about 9 or 10 months into the purported pandemic that the whole thing was a scam, that there was no real new novel coronavirus, and that I'd spent the first 9 or 10 months writing articles about COVID-19 as if it really existed. And I used to refer to things like the Diamond Princess cruise ship. I used to refer to the Wuhan lab leak and various things which I thought at the time showed that the official narrative on COVID was a distortion of what was actually going on. And this is because I was fooled by the dual narrative. So what we have for the dual narrative is we have that the vast majority of people will simply believe what they're told on the news. And, you know, if you say to them something didn't really happen, they'll say, well, of course it happened. I saw it on the news. You know, they saw the images presented to make them believe that actually happened as reported. But the people in power, of course, know that there are critical thinkers out there. You know, just like there's people questioning the Lucy Letby case, as you were talking about some moments ago. They know that there are critical thinkers out there who won't just accept a story which seems rather dubious. So what they do is they prepare an alternative narrative for the critical thinkers. And COVID-19 made it very clear that there was society was divided into a vast majority who we sort of disparagingly call normies, and then there was maybe 15% of people who are skeptics, critical thinkers, right? But what I just found is that I had been fooled, like many of those people who describe themselves as awake. I had been fooled by this alternative narrative that had been given to us about the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And, you know, there are many people who consider themselves to be awake who still believe that the pandemic was real. And they do that because they've been thrown all these lines by the people in power, the mass manipulators. So what we really have, Sonia, just to conclude my point here, is that we have three groups in society. We have the normies who just accept whatever they're given. We have the critical thinkers, or the critical thinkers in inverted commas, who are targeted by the authorities with a believable alternative narrative.
Right.
And then you have a tiny minority within a minority who actually see through the alternative narrative as well as the official narrative.
It's a lot of confusion in the mix, isn't it? And then obviously what happens in that you're talking, we end up all fighting amongst ourselves, don't we, about which narrative we're going to be then pursuing, which divides us down even further. So it's genius, really. These people aren't idiots. We should always be aware of that. They're very clever. They know about mass manipulation. So I think that's a perfect example. You also use the assassination of Charlie Kirk as an example in that as well, about this kind of dual messaging. One of my favorite points that you make, and I see it all the time, is the inversion of purpose. And we saw it, didn't we, with Ofcom and the online harms bill. We must protect the children. That's the kind of thing you're talking about, isn't it?
Yes, funnily enough, Sonia, I don't know if you've seen, there's a sort of billboard campaign at the moment, and it's purportedly about protecting women and girls from abuse, and there's all kinds of different slogans, and one of them is stopping her from going online is abuse. Well, who's stopping people from going online? I mean, I'm thinking about teenagers at the moment from using social media. The government is the abuser. The government is who is making it, making people feel unsafe, and is actually making people unsafe. So yes, I'm glad you picked that one out, the inversion of purpose, because that is classic George Orwell, isn't it? The Ministry of Peace, Ministry of Truth.
Yes. Yes, I mean, there's so many good ones. I mean, one that we talk around often around here, of course, is problem, reaction, solution. And that is they create a problem, they come up with the solution to address it. And then they create the problem, we get the reaction. It's like any abuser, isn't it? Is that the abuser creates the problem, they get the reaction, and then we must have a solution based on the reaction. So a lot of confusion that takes place there. And I think it's very hard for people to understand what they are or are not dealing with, because one, they have the state on their side, they have the media on their side to push through all these messages. So it's like a constant bombardment. How do you keep your head when all around are losing theirs, Neil? How do you?
It is very difficult. I mean, the modus operandi, as I put it, of are the various means by which the powers that be maintain the masses in a state of ignorance, confusion, and conflict. Divide and rule being one of those 10 modus operandi.
Symbolism, very important. We do, again, talk a lot around here about symbolism. And it's interesting because in your piece, you actually highlighted some of the things that I had covered when they so apparently captured the killer of Charlie Kirk. And it's so brilliant to see, because it's like, I thought that as well. And you looked at the issue of 33. 33 was a really pressing thing, wasn't it? Kash Patel. And it was 33 hours to be exact. Just talk us through that and why you picked up on that.
Well, I always used to scoff a little bit at some sort of awake friends of mine.
So did I.
One about 666 and 33 this and 9/11 and all these numbers that meant something. And I just thought, well, look, it's just coincidental. You can find something that adds up to 33 anywhere. But having seen just how blatantly they're doing it now, I mean, there was that shooting of the woman in Minnesota, and the state officials were arguing that this officer was particularly trigger happy because he'd been attacked before and needed, guess what, 33 stitches.
I didn't catch that. See, it's so interesting because it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like if you buy a certain car, suddenly you see that car constantly on the road. Once you're locked into something, it's amazing. The other thing that really interests me, and I think will absolutely interest our viewers, because again, we talk about it a lot and I don't have the answer to it. And I wonder if you might, and that is the whole issue of detachment reality. You asked the question, is there an unwritten rule that people in power in perpetrating psyops and scams must give us a sign of what they are doing? Well, a million videos are made on the fact that signs are given. What's your conclusion to that?
Yes, well, just another quick example of that, when Tim Walz, who's going to be the vice president if Kamala Harris had won the election, he's of course a leading, I think was he a senator or something like that in Minnesota?
Yes.
And before he went to the press conference to talk about one of these latest killings, he was doing the sign they all do with the fingers to show that this is it's like a sort of Masonic message that they give, and it is so prevalent. You see Ursula von der Leyen doing it. You see all political leaders who are in on this tyrannical kind of technocratic globalist agenda that they're foisting on us. When something happens and it looks a bit dubious, critical thinkers are wondering, did that really happen like that? And you'll see them make these symbols with their hands, but they also use the numbers as well. And I believe, and I'm not an expert on this, look, none of us are experts on this. It's impossible for us to know what's really going on in the shadowy upper heights of this globalist cabal. But it seems to me that signs are given by politicians who are in the know that this is what you need to do to demonstrate that you are giving the sign that you are acting, that this is not the truth that you are giving, and that removes some of the culpability. There's something around that. So I don't really know exactly what the purpose of the numbers are, but there's definitely something going on. I have gone well past the time when I used to be very skeptical with people raising this. To me, it's now a certainty that they are doing this. Another one, Sonia, was Emmanuel Macron, the French leader, with the black eye.
Oh yes.
That
yes.
seems to be another ritualistic thing that you see with some politicians.
Elon Musk as well appeared in the Oval Office with a black eye, blamed his child, which nobody believed. But again, similar thing as well. There is supposed to be a kind of black eye club. I've been interested in this sort of stuff now probably for decades, actually, probably since my 20s. And the reality is, like you, it just comes to a point where there's just too much to be coincidental. I mean, it really is. It starts to pile up, and it doesn't. And I never wanted to be considered a conspiracy theorist, right? But we now know that that's just a pejorative term to dismiss people who are actually critical thinkers. And that's been borne out, hasn't it, over the last 6 years? So I think it's really important. And I also think it's really important to get past the point where you no longer give a toss that people think you're ridiculous, right? Because I think the way that people kind of laugh at it and attempt to humiliate you. First of all, we don't know who's who online. There's a million multiple people, aren't there, that have been set up by governments around the world who are there to kind of, throw you off anyway. And they are there also to make you look as if you're being ridiculous. I mean, that's kind of the aim. When do you think you got past the point of no longer caring?
Well, I think when they unleashed the biggest scam of all time, COVID-19,
right.
when I realized that was not just them exploiting a naturally arising virus, or else a virus that was accidentally or deliberately leaked from a lab. when I came to realize that the whole thing is a scam, and I thought that you think about all those people that died, all of the elderly patients kicked out of hospital, all of midazolam, all of the destruction of children's lives by closing the schools,
Shameful period.
forcing people to wear masks, giving them injections for a vaccine for a virus that doesn't exist. You think of the terrible immoralities. It's got to be one of the worst crimes ever perpetuated. And when you see that your leaders can do that. Now, I do think that most MPs...
I just have to interrupt you there, Neil, because we're streaming on YouTube, and I am followed by people who make it their life mission to report me constantly to YouTube.
Sorry, YouTube.
And no, just that comment you just made, a vaccine for a virus that doesn't exist. This is Neil's opinion, YouTube, and he is entitled to it, although I don't doubt that many of the people in the comments will be backing you up. But I just have to say that, Neil, because you know what people are like. They're so gruesome in their behavior, but do continue.
As you say, that's my opinion, and that was just answering your question. But that's what made me realize that this new world order, which people have been talking about for a long time, it is far more sinister and far more psychopathic than I could ever have imagined before.
I mean, I have to agree with you. I do think it's psychopathic. I don't think that these people who are there, those kind of parasitical elitists, I don't think for a second they're like you and I, not for a second, but they are able to put people in positions who appear to be like you and I, which brings me, of course, to something that many people discuss, the whole idea of controlled opposition. I'm sure you've been called controlled opposition. I've certainly been called it a number of times, usually by anonymous people on social media who literally could be anybody. And seeing as I now know that during C-19, the government were actually spying on me because we discovered that through subject access requests. So these people who are calling us controlled opposition could actually be anybody. But they do exist, don't they? Controlled opposition.
Yes. So this term controlled opposition, it's thrown around, isn't it? It's overused. And I would say that there are three types of controlled opposition. So the first type includes people like you and me, Sonia. We're all controlled. We all know that there are limits to what we can say.
Like I just said to you about YouTube as one example. Yes, I agree.
And you've been a very courageous investigative journalist who, you do say truths as you see them. But we all have to be careful, don't we? And we all have to hold ourselves back sometimes. So to that extent, everyone is in the opposition is controlled. Then there's a second level. It's people who are kind of being used by the powers that be without really unwittingly,
I know the kind you mean.
They're channeling everyone's attention into sort of particular areas and not talking about other things. But they may be really genuine people. I mean, I won't name any, but I can think of several websites and social media influencers who are like that. They're very genuine about certain things, but they won't go into certain areas. And for that reason, they're useful to the powers that be.
Yes.
And then there's people who are actually paid.
Yeah.
By certain groups, shall I say, to peddle a certain narrative and to make sure that a particular agenda is pursued.
And that goes all across the board, although we did get some admittance from the Israeli government that they were paying online influencers $7,000 for their posts. But it isn't just Israel that benefits from that. It's important to acknowledge. But I mean, this is really interesting. So as I say, I think it's a fantastic article. I really do. It's one of the clearest articles that I've actually read that sets this out in a really accessible way, because sometimes for people who are new to this stuff, understanding it can be a bit like trying to nail jelly to a wall, can't it? It's like, like the kind of that sort of thing. But you do set it out really clearly. What do you think is the most problematic of the manipulations, if you haven't already mentioned it?
The left versus right political paradigm. I mean, I wrote another article just the other day on, it's published on the Off Guardian website. It's called Free Speech for Me, but Not for Thee.
Yes.
And, I'm sort of post-political. That's what I consider myself to be. But this article does take aim at the political left, because I see that the left has not had to do as much as the right in terms of apologizing for its existence. The left has always been kind of accepted within polite society.
As the nice guys, as the nice people,
Yeah.
right? Because the right has always been seen as the nasty parties of people. Yes, you're right.
That's right. So because of that, well, I think there's probably more people on the right, or used to be on the right, who have gone into no man's land and discovered that that trench warfare was futile, right. And that actually this is just all being contrived. This division, and it's a means of, but by dividing us, preventing us from uniting against the people in power, the real enemy. But the left, I think, have been tended to be much more entrenched. I mean, you saw that with COVID. Many commentators, influencers on the left loved COVID. They enjoyed all the lockdown and all that. They saw it as sort of greater good socialism, and they were very against the what they called anti-vaxxers and smearing any critics. There were a few on the left, obviously, that did break out of that. But I think this political division, that on the left, there's much more reluctance to, step out of their. It's like a comfort zone, isn't it?
I come from the left originally. I completely abandoned it. I couldn't be part of half of the madness that was taking place. So I'm actually politically homeless. And I actually like that space, because I can really clearly see all the manipulations that are taking place from both sides. But you're absolutely right. And something you referred to back earlier in the conversation. And so when they have the left versus right, that is a whole lot of time taken up on nonsense. They get a piece of information, don't they, about the opposing lot, and then they spend all day just online, like backwards and forwards. And it's like, this is just absolutely insane. And I can't help but think these have to be paid agitators, people who are so dedicated to it. They just almost have to be, because otherwise, why aren't they working? I mean, other than if they're like unemployed or whatever. But for the most part, I feel that there's a lot of paid agitation online that we're just not necessarily aware of. Yeah. And that can also include people who we think we're okay with, right? So it's really, really difficult. But as I say, it's a terrific article. I'm going to let you go. Is it in the Conservative Woman? It's called More Fool You, 10 Modus Operandi of the Mass Manipulators. Highly recommended. If I haven't already put a link in the description, I will at the end of this stream. Really appreciate you joining us this morning, Neil. Truly do. And have a wonderful week. Take good care of yourself, everybody.
Thanks, Sonia.
Neil McCrae.
If anyone wants to see any more of my ravings, go to my Substack.
Yes, I think I have actually put your Substack link in the description already. And if not, I will also do that as well. Take good care of yourself. Lovely to have you with us.
Thanks, Sonia. Bye all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Wonderful. Wonderful. It's an excellent article. I can't recommend it enough. Sunut said, Neil has never been afraid to tell the truth. Good man. And telling the truth is a problem, right? And Herbert hates the left-right polemic. It's the biggest diversion hysteria trick they hold over us. And Randy said, left and right divided will never make the whole brain work efficiently. Thanks, Neil. Cheers, Neil, says people. Mass formation psychosis is alive and kicking. It is indeed, B. And thank you, Neil. Thank you, Neil, from the crew in the chat. Right, before I bring in our next guest, find the middle path, says Shug. I think I might have already done that. Shug, I could be wrong. I could absolutely be wrong, but I feel like I have, and it feels good. I just want to briefly talk about this, only briefly. It was, of course, the GRAMMYS last night. This is Justin Bieber, who emerged. He came on the Grammy stage for the first time in 4 years, shirtless and wearing only gym shorts. Everybody was like, what the hell is going on? Now, of course, there's been a lot of gossip about Justin Bieber over the last year, about question marks about what happened to him regarding Sean Puffy Combs. And very famously, of course, there was that video where Justin Bieber was a kid. I don't even know how old he was. I doubt he was more than, I don't know, 11 or 12 or whatever. And he was with Puffy, and Puffy was talking about how they were going to disappear kind of like overnight, and nobody was going to know where they were going to be and everything. And there's been a lot of talk, a lot of allegations made about about whether Justin Bieber is of safe and sound mind. And I don't necessarily want to add to that, but I do think it's kind of weird at the 68th annual Grammy Awards that he takes the stage just looking like that. There's a vulnerability to it. Randy said he is on display for kinkies, and that's possible too. I think that does happen. It was Clive Davis's party on Saturday. Of course, Clive Davis, former big boss at Arista. And around this time every year, I get really ticked off because I see that there is still no justice for Whitney Houston, and it upsets me. Alien Big Cat feels it's a humiliation ritual with Justin Bieber. And the reason I say no justice for Whitney Houston is because we were told that Whitney Houston died in her bath and a Grammy weekend and in the hotel, and she was left in her hotel suite for 11 hours while Clive Davis's party took place down below. And I always feel it was very ritualistic. Clive Davis, of course, has always been credited with discovering Whitney Houston. She was a massive artist for him, but towards the end of her life, she had become more of a problem for him because kind of like the drugs had taken its toll, and she just wasn't doing what the music industry wanted her to do. And Whitney, sadly, in the eyes of the music industry, was worth more dead than alive. That's the reality, as is always the case when very famous people die, whether that's Whitney or Prince or Michael Jackson. Their music gets a resurgence, which always benefits those left behind rather than those who have already gone. Yes, Jacqueline, then her daughter died the same way. Exactly. I've talked about this before. Her daughter, Bobby Christina, died in eerily similar circumstances. And Bobby Christina also, I think it was the day before Whitney died, they had a situation in the bath where it looked likely that she was going to drown. Some weird stuff had happened with Bobby Christina prior to Whitney, but I have never believed the official story. Not at all. Not at all. Ruthless, says Boaty McBoatface. Indeed. Well, I'm going to tell you somebody who isn't ruthless, and it's our dear John Henden. John has been with us on a regular basis for a number of years now. Let me just take that image off the screen. So, but something feels weird about that image. When I saw it, I was like, that's not right. Something's definitely wrong with that image of Justin Bieber. But I do think that he's probably quite a disturbed individual, and often that is the way. And he was very young when he entered the music industry. I'm not sure how well protected he was, and the music industry is full of predators. It's full of predators. We know that. Right, let's bring in lovely John. Where is he? There he is on the screen. Here he is, psychotherapist John Henden. Good morning to you, John. How are you?
Good morning to you, Sonia. Yes, I'm very well, thank you. A little bit jaded after Friday and Saturday doing a 2-day Zoom workshop entitled Solution Focused Suicide Prevention for a group of 60 Polish counselors and psychotherapists.
Wow! So you've been working all weekend. Do you get
yes.
Do you get today off, John? Do you get to?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, I super appreciate you joining us then, given this is actually your day off. Thank you very much. As I said, John, you and I have been talking now for a good 6 years. You're somebody that I trust implicitly. And I love your approach to this. You were very much part of the NHS for decades, and you came out and you've kind of helped me rework my understanding of what I used to call mental health. And you were quite right in steering me away from that, because that just lends itself to a medical model than anything else. And you're very much about talking therapies, aren't you?
I am indeed, yes.
And so this brings me to something which wouldn't necessarily be your ordinary domain, which I think makes it even more important. So the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, what are they in relation to you, or what is it?
Yes, well, the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy is an organisation I've belonged to for over 30 years.
Wow.
And they have something like 58,000 counsellors and therapists in membership. And over that time, they've been very helpful to me. I've had some legal issues that I needed advice on, which they were excellent over. I've also had some, because of the nature of the work I do, some complex confidentiality queries and conundrums, and they've been very helpful with that too. But following Baroness Casey's audit on rape gangs, it just occurred to me that there has been nothing in our house journal. And our house journal is called Therapy Today. And I tracked back through 12 months worth of issues, and I found nothing at all on it, which was rather concerning.
No reference at all to what we've come to know as grooming gangs.
No, there was no reference. And, you know, the journal has had that. What they do, they have big issue features on certain topics from time to time. So there was one on, and when I say big issue, you know, whole issues devoted, you know, it could be 20 to 24 pages of the journal devoted to this particular issue, a particular issue of concern. And one was LGBTQ plus community in the therapy profession. Another one was barriers to Black women and Black people's stress and underrepresentation in counselling, etc. So I said, look, this is a really important issue. 250,000 young girls were abused over the course of about 30 years, and it was all been hushed up. And surely, you know, there must be at least 1,000 of our members who are actually involved in this work, you know, and so therefore, shouldn't we have this topic highlighted and devote a journal, you know, a full issue of the journal to it? Because, you know, there could be, as I say, thousands of our members, and there are 250,000 victims. And so we need advice, you know, we need suggestions. And BACP have chosen other topics like working with couples, which I do quite a lot of, you know, lots of advice and tips on how to work. And the current journal has working with cancer survivors who have already been given the all clear. So this is a particular area of need, you know. And anyway, I wrote to the chief executive, Phil James, and I wrote to Katerina Giorgio, the editor of Therapy Today, saying, look, we do need this. You know, we need a full issue devoted. 4 times they refused.
That's extraordinary, because what we call grooming gangs, obviously it's kind of like a shorthand expression now for kind of gangs which have been predominantly either Muslim or Pakistani in descent. We know that. So it's a very particular type of abuse of young women that's taking place. And it deserves its own exploration. Certainly you'd think, by the body that oversees stuff like this, right?
Yes, the largest body in the UK.
What's going on, John? What is going on? One thing that you said, and I think it's interesting, you said that it brings its own integrity into question, as it may have gone against its own philosophy, which is our desire for social justice determines everything we do and guides our relationship with our members and the public, as well as commissioners and government. So Have they? Because what I seem to have got that they've said to you is that they stated that they're not in a position to devote a full or part issue of therapy today to this subject. Did they say any more as to why not?
No, they just stated we will
Oh.
not be, and it's interesting because what Phil James and the CEO and Katharina Giorgio did, they passed me over to their equity, diversity, and inclusion member to dialogue with me. And so I just continued. I replied to her, but I also, every time, I included Phil James and Katharina Giorgio into the correspondence. And it's interesting, you know, because it looks like diversity and inclusion excludes 1,000 counsellors potentially who are working with these victims who are survivors, and also not including the 250,000 victims.
So they are failing to represent the people they're supposed to represent. That's
Yes,
what you're saying.
that's what I'm saying.
I mean, I don't know the situation and what governs them and what their responsibilities are, but surely they are failing in some sort of duty here.
I agree. I think they are failing in a duty, and they kept on replying and saying, "Oh well, John, if you submit bullet points of an article you might like to write, we will consider it along with everything else." And I replied, I said, "Look, I personally haven't had any experience of working with the victims, but we need to, and you need to include in a whole issue." On this topic, those who have, and like with the other big issue topics you've chosen, have an editorial on it and have someone from chair of trustees talking about it, and also the CEO making a statement. And maybe I suggested maybe even Maggie Oliver, the police inspector who was a whistleblower into cover-ups within the police force about this. And again, they kept coming back and saying, no, John, you send us bullet points of an article you'd like to write. And I said, that's not good enough. You know, we need a whole issue on it.
Yeah.
And
somebody who is expert at it, as you say yourself.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
It's ridiculous. That sounds like it's such a convenient thing to say, isn't it? Oh, John, you write an article on it, kind of knowing full well that you're not even necessarily equipped to. I mean, I'm sure you could, John, of that I'm in no doubt whatsoever, but because the integrity that you bring to everything, it should be somebody else like Maggie Oliver, as you say, who is fully equipped to deal with this subject.
I agree. And also, you know, like with the other big issue topics they've chosen that I've just mentioned, they have survivors, also their piece they can put on it as well, and also parents and family members of victims where there've been cover-ups. And I said, you know, if you need any names here, then contact Charlie Peters of GB News, who was awarded Journalist of the Year for highlighting this whole issue and uncovering it. And in fact, Keir Starmer, you remember when he did his U-turn in Parliament, because he was resisting a national inquiry like anything for a long time. He actually, when he in his statement in the House, complimented or congratulated Charlie Peters for bringing it to public attention. So I suggested to Phil James, you know, contact him and he'll give you some names of people who can actually contribute their own personal experiences to a big issue article.
Let me read you this comment, which I want to address. And it is, oops, gone. Fun Times Forever said, blaming just them, you were falling for the division agenda. Also, Sonia, white people gangs are around too. Now, the reason I'm going to tackle that is because we need to name a problem in order to be able to solve it. And what has gone on with these so-called grooming gangs for a long period of time is people have refused to name it and say, this is the demographic. Of course, I cover fully white abusers, as I will be doing today in the whole Epstein thing. Of course I do. But
absolutely right.
It's important, isn't it, John, to name a problem?
It is. And of course, for years, politicians and police broadened it out, didn't they? Say, oh, well, there's abuse going on everywhere, as a way of being complicit in the cover-up, really, of the actual issue that needs to be named, and how now has been named by everyone. And in fact, the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy Journal actually did exactly that. They followed on and said, oh, well, it's going on everywhere, John, you know, whites and other people, other ethnic groups. We know that, but here we have a discrete group, and a discrete group of 250,000 victims, which is the worst sexual abuse crime scandal in the whole history of our country.
Yes, and again, Drum, I have to take issue with you. Drumstick said it's not a race thing. Predators come in all shades. Yes, and you definitely hear that on Wake Up. I'm not, because my thing is I'm not party political really about anything, and certainly not when it comes to predators. And I do think it's important, and I think that we let down victims of abuse when we fail to call it as we see it, and that has been an absolute problem here. Of course, I'm not saying all people of Pakistani descent or all Muslims are part of rape gangs. Of course, I'm not saying that any more than I'm saying all white people are part of paedophile rings. That would be ludicrous. But by the same token, these different demographics, John, they present in different ways, don't they? A lot of the time, these so-called grooming gangs are different than politicians in power who are abusing children. It's a different kind of modus operandi, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, and you know, the facts are they're coming out. You know, that, and I think Baroness Casey mentioned this. You know, that of the 250,000 victims, almost all, not all, but almost all were white, and almost all of the predators were Muslims of Pakistani descent. That is now an established fact. And
we need to be able to say that without people automatically going, what about white people? We discuss white people. But the thing is, when we do the what abouts, we immediately, and you'll know this more than I do, tell us the problem about what abouts. I know it's slightly off the point, but it isn't in some respects.
Well, it's like the use of the word but, isn't it? When you say, you know, someone says, well, I love you dearly, but it discounts everything that went before.
Right.
So the what about not necessarily diminishes what went before, not dismisses it, but it diminishes it, doesn't it? And that's the way that it's been dealt with, you know, and no one who is speaking up for these victims, you know, who is speaking up for what happened to them? Very few people, you know, and more and more people are now wanting to be heard. And the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy Journal really needs to flag this up, you know, and to completely dismiss it all the time. You know, I suggested that they were complicit in the cover-up, or well, first of all, complacent in not addressing it and not devoting a whole issue to it. And then, and I suggested in later correspondence that a colleague of mine said, well, it looks like now they're complicit in it, in keeping it quiet.
That is the problem, John. It seems like everything that these victims already experienced when they were trying to get the truth out in the first place. I thought we were surely past that. And for the association that is responsible for counselling and psychotherapy not to recognise it as fully as it needs to be recognised is, I mean, it's surely some form of, it feels like a cover-up. It feels like negligence. Is it PC? What's going on here?
I'm appalled by it. And to add insult to injury here, Sonia, in the December issue, in the editorial, Caterina Giorgio, who is the editor of the journal, said, and I quote, "What I have come to love most about our big issue features in therapy today is that they tackle the most topical, relevant news trends around therapy, but crucially, create a focal point of community to facilitate conversation between us all."
This is Woodburn in the comments says they are enablers essential in perpetuating abuse. And I think we could say that actually at this point, because if they are failing to highlight what clearly needs to be highlighted, and it's very dismissive of the victims, isn't it? Extremely dismissive.
It is dismissive.
As a psychotherapist, what sort of impact does this unacknowledgement, for want of a better word, do to victims and survivors?
Well, it has a similar sort of effect as the first inquiry, and that they were setting it up, and there's what's that MP in Parliament for women and girls who's supposed to be supporting this, but was looking very uncomfortable when the new chair was announced for the national inquiry. Lots of the victims felt they were discounted on the board. They were just seen as sort of tokens there, and their views weren't really taken into consideration, and they resigned from it. So we're not having anything to do with this inquiry if you're going to treat us like that. So it has a detrimental effect on self-esteem and self-confidence.
Dear God.
And and this sort of activity by therapy today is doing just that. It achieves that. As if they're not important, as their case, their lives aren't important, and they need help. And as you know, I'm a great promoter of survival of trauma and thriving after trauma. And you can't do that without proper counselling and psychotherapy.
Just compounds the pain they're already enduring, doesn't it? It's hard enough already for survivors to talk about their experience, much less a huge body, influential body like that, treating them as if they're some dirty secret to be ignored. It's awful, John.
That's what really appalled me. I'm like you, Sonia, and I was listening to your last article. We're believers in honesty and integrity, aren't we? And finding out the truth.
Yes, I don't care what shade it comes in, what sex it comes in. I don't care about any of those things. If it's an abuser, we need to tackle them and we need to highlight it. And especially when it's on such an industrial scale as what has happened. This is not a one-off. How can they act as if it's nothing? I find it quite shocking, John. This is another captured organization, I don't doubt. I mean, that's...
Well, funny you should say captured, because over the last 5 or 6 years, I've noticed, a bit like a national broadcaster that loses thousands of subscribers every month, and we all know which one that is. They have their narratives. It's a captured organization. They have their narratives, and if a news item doesn't fit one of their narratives that they want to report on, they'll just ignore it completely.
Yes.
And it seems like the magazine Therapy Today has gone that way over recent years. There are certain issues they won't highlight, and this is one of them, I'm sure.
Shameful, absolutely shameful. Do you have one of your books to hand? Whack it up in front of the screen, John, if you do.
Well, yeah, yes. I've worked with survivors of severe trauma. I've worked with adult survivors of child abuse and neglect. And, the book here, then, What It Takes to Thrive, Techniques for Severe Trauma and Stress Recovery. It's actually a handbook for therapists, but it's also a do-it-yourself handbook for survivors. And I've slightly contradicted myself there, I realize, about having proper therapy. But there's so many tools and techniques in here that people can use. And it's based on the idea, this recovery from trauma is based on the idea from a friend and colleague in the States, Yvonne Dolan. And she says, you can be a victim, but you're a survivor, and now you can thrive.
Love that. Absolutely.
And that's what it's about, helping people thrive.
And it did help me thrive when I was going through a particularly difficult time, and I got my hands on that book, and it's so practical and so accessible. I highly, highly recommend it, as indeed do I highly recommend you, John Henden. It's always lovely to have you with us.
But one thing before I go, Sonia, maybe all is not lost.
Go on.
I have been contacting Phil James, the CEO of the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy, over a 4-month period from June to October. And the rejections kept coming. No, we're not going to do this. And I had the same rejection from Katerina Giorgio. But I'm sure amongst your viewers, there are quite a few therapists like me, and there's probably quite a few victims of the rape gangs watching today. And maybe there are other victims of abuse and neglect and torture who want to support them. And so I have here, in time-honoured fashion, the email address of both. So Phil James there, And there's his email address, bacp@bacp.co.uk. And Katerina Giorgio, the editor, at Therapy Today at thinkpublishing.co.uk.
Now, obviously, those are publicly available email addresses.
They are. They're publicly available, front page of the journal.
Yes, absolutely, they are. Now, if Wake Up viewers, I implore you to write to them. Obviously, don't be rude, don't be aggressive, but just say you've been watching John Henden, a psychotherapist who's been registered with them for 3 decades at least, and he's deeply concerned about the lack of grooming gang coverage, as indeed are you. I think that's a fair thing to say, isn't it, John?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And it would be really supportive. And it's supportive not just of me, but of 250,000 victims over 30 weeks, 30 years of rape, torture, and in some cases, we know, death amongst those victims, which is deplorable.
Acknowledged. Absolutely. I'm going to read you what Frangleberry Pigeon Pie says. Interesting name there. John sounds like my ex-psychologist who quit NHS because she couldn't work within the limitations of services. Does that sound like a fair description of you, John?
It does. Yes, I met many. Yes, indeed, in recent years. Yes.
Lovely to have you with us. Thank you for highlighting this. You will be back with us again very shortly. We have to organise the next day, but so it's lovely to have you with us. John Henden, psychotherapist, everybody. Have a lovely week, John. Take good care of yourself.
You have a lovely week too, Sonia, and see you again soon. Bye, everyone.
Lots of love to him. He's great, isn't he? We love John. Yes, indeed, we do. And yes, so going back to my point, kids, I don't care what anybody looks like. If they're an abuser, we must nail them. We must not be fragile or, what about name them all individually, as I'm going to spend a significant amount of time on this show talking about Jeffrey Epstein and talking about all the people involved in Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I didn't find one Muslim amongst that lot, right? So again, and I'm not expecting people to go, what about the Muslims? Right? I think you might take my point. I hope you do. I hope you do. This is a non-discriminatory child abuse calling out service around here. I don't care where you're from, how big you are, how wide you are. If you are going to abuse children or be involved in the abuse of them, I'm calling you out. And that's the way it goes. That's the way I roll, kids. That's the way I roll. Right. Just want to talk about this. What is honestly happening with NASA at the moment? Anybody seen that? Of course, they are currently executing the Artemis program. We're told the idea is to return humans to the moon and establish a long-term presence there. Well, first of all, I don't believe that we are returning humans to the moon, not based on the July 1969 scam anyway. And so they are now, they're scheduling a test run, essentially. The mission is a 10-day trip, taking 4 astronauts around the moon and back without landing. That is the plan. They are now gearing up, I think it's today, for a critical wet dress rehearsal. They were gearing up over the weekend. They're saying that this is the most powerful rocket ever built by NASA. It provides the thrust needed to send the Orion spaceship to the moon. Many people would argue that that's just not possible in the first place. And they did a test run on Saturday night. But NASA called it off. They said there was a problem with the weather and they're going to go back at it again today. And we shall see. And the idea is eventually they're saying is they want to establish so that NASA views the moon as proving ground for the technologies and operations necessary to eventually send humans to Mars in the 2030s. There's that year again. So that is the aim. The aim is to fly. This is what they're telling us. The aim is to fly around the moon and do some kind of scoping exercise in order to be able to prepare to send people to Mars. What are your thoughts? Tell me, what are your thoughts in the comments? Tell me. Not, Mel says NASA, not a space agency. It's a 60 million a day money laundering scam. And Herbert said NASA is a hot rod gang gone feral. That's funny. That's funny. Let's see, what else have we got? Houston, we have a problem. Coomraker Epstein revival. It's very interesting when they do all this, isn't it? It's all BS. says Jen. I think we have people who don't necessarily believe that NASA is quite what they claim it to be. Drumstick says when they fly around the moon, oh, that's gone. It's gone. When they fly around, these are going so quickly. When they fly around the moon, they should take some photos of their 1969. Right. Who's filming it? Says Paul Kavanagh. Is it Spielberg? And Randy said they really have to be careful about all the satellites out there. Glennis said it's Bolocks. You know the word. And Nikki thinks that we should dust off our telescopes, keep an eye on them. The moon's, what's that, Kenneth? The moon's a balloon. Who that wants to, says Alien Big Cat. Never a straight answer, NASA, says Gazgano. Indeed. So I think that there is a fair amount of decent, healthy skepticism about the NASA agency. Reba said, oh, no, that's gone now. Jan said, who filmed their landing and taking off from the moon? Well, we had... was it Mizumo? What was his name? Mizumo. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. A brilliant Italian filmmaker who had made this great documentary about the moon. And he was on with us, and as a filmmaker and as a photographer, he could see all the photographic problems. That's still on my YouTube. It's actually as a separate video as well. Wiltshire. Oh, I don't know what that's about. B. I'm not gonna, because it's just completely off topic. When you see it, actually is so funny. Yes, Randy. Indeed, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? About any of these kind of things, when you see it, you like, oh my God, they really did think we were idiots. They really thought they could try and take us in on that. Look what happened to Kubrick. Stanley Kubrick, didn't he die? It was like 48 hours after the final screening of, wasn't it Eyes Wide Shut? Kind of weird. Hope, love, peace needs to go, but we'll catch up later. Have a lovely day, everyone. Yes, indeed. Bit windy on the moon, eh? Says Gina. That flag was really going some. It's all bollards. Aged like avocado. And that's the thing about the truth, is that the lies eventually just fall away, or things become apparent that make the original lie impossible. And I think a lot of that really applies to what's happening with the Jeffrey Epstein situation. So shall we turn our attention to it? Kids? I think we should. So what happened this weekend was the US Department of Justice dropped over 3 million pages on Friday, which completes the requirement of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which was signed by President Trump in November 2025. And he didn't want to. Nobody can tell me he did. He's done everything he can to delay it, and with good reason, we can see. Although he was on Air Force One yesterday saying that these files now have absolved him. I don't think so, Donald. I don't think so at all. There are so many questions to arise as a consequence of this. And bear in mind, that's 3 million pages. There is no way on earth that anybody's been all the way through them. I've been through some, but there's a lot of information there. So I'm going to look at some of the key points that have obviously made headlines that people are talking about. And let's discuss that. And first of all, big shout out to Thomas Massey, because without Thomas Massey, I don't think this would have happened. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, both of them have been absolutely brilliant for the survivors of Epstein. And what happened with Thomas Massey, he tweeted yesterday, and he's obviously in Congress, US Congress, and he said, today I forced Department of Justice to release millions of Epstein documents. Bad news. The Israel's first super PAC just bought another $800,000 of ads against me. You can't make this up. I definitely need your help, he said. Now, why would the Israel lobby suddenly buy lots of advertising against the man who's asking for transparency to do with the Epstein files? Of course, we were told that Jeffrey Epstein was found hanged in 2019. His relatives believe he was murdered to silence him. A whole load of other people believe that he was never murdered, that he was just taken out of the situation because he knew too much, and clearly he did. And what's quite shocking, of course, is that Epstein was convicted in 2008 of procuring a minor for prostitution. He was a registered level 3. The highest risk of reoffending. And what happened is that everyone emailing him and hanging out with him after that did so knowing he was a child sex trafficker. And that includes people I'm about to talk about. Okay, really, that's really important. So as I say, huge amount to go through. Revelations will continue. And I do have to question that the length of this process, is it designed to sort of numb us as we go along with it? Because we are hearing and seeing such egregious stuff that if they'd have put it all out, like all at once, it would probably have been overwhelming for everybody. But it is really concerning. And Donald Trump going on about how he's been absolved, I don't know why you would say that. He's mentioned hundreds of times in the latest Epstein files. And there's a list compiled by the FBI last year of allegations which were made against Donald Trump by callers to its national Operations Center tip line. And the list includes claims of sexual abuse. Now, first of all, I want to be very clear, and that is an allegation is not proof that he did any of these things, and that applies to everybody. And secondly, a mention in the Epstein files is not proof that you are an abuser either, right? And thirdly, we also have to remember that this is what they are willing to release. This has been through all manner of things, redactions. Pam Bondi is really in a lot of trouble. So is Kash Patel. Both of them clearly have just, they are complicit in a cover-up. And I do believe that this is a cover-up. And so the fallout continues, although as it would appear at this moment in time, not for Teflon Don, right? But Trump and his administration, they are in shite street, no doubt about it whatsoever. I think these are some of the most disturbing pictures that I saw. This obviously is the man formerly known as Prince Andrew, that is. He is now, of course, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. And I have no idea what's going on here, and neither does anybody. I think that is at Epstein's New York house because the doors are the same as at Epstein's New York townhouse. I don't even know whether that woman on the floor is awake or not. Andrew in the emails goes by the name often of the Invisible Man. And there was an email where Epstein was offering Andrew a 26-year-old Russian female. Andrew was about 50 at the time, and his own daughters were roughly the age of his proposed date. So very creepy indeed. But these pictures are really, really problematic for Andrew, although less so for Charles, as I will explain. So first of all, that email where Epstein is offering a 26-year-old Russian girl makes me sick, younger than my own daughter. I just puke at these people. They're disgusting. Disgusting. Do you see, I have no biases, right, against predators. A predator is a predator is a predator. Anyway, so Epstein offered this 26-year-old girl, and where it gets Andrew in a lot of trouble is you go back to his Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis. Well, he was like, he denied that Epstein had made any female introductions to him. So that clearly not right from that email. And Andrew was responding to him as well. And Andrew has also in those emails asked Ghislaine Maxwell, the only person to actually be in prison for all of this, asked her to introduce him to inappropriate friends. And I have to say now, and I was very much of the mind that Virginia Giuffre had killed herself. Excuse me. I have to say now that the idea that she killed herself is looking ever more problematic. And I really tried to be as reasonable as possible about this, taking into account the problems that Virginia was suffering from with alleged domestic abuse that she was dealing with. And I think probably she was having some psychological problems as well. But I have to say her so-called suicide looks ever more problematic now. And I know there are many out there who's always thought it was problematic, but I didn't because, and I think it's still kind of like 50-50. But the reason I say that now is that these people knew what was likely to be in the files. And the one person who could testify about Andrew is dead. So that seems very convenient to me. And this image of the woman on the floor, don't know the context or pitch of the picture, don't know the age of the woman. Andrew's reputation is already shattered into a million pieces anyway. This merely reinforces what people think. Commenters say this is a problem for the royal family, but it's not though. And I'll tell you why. Because first of all, they've shuttled Andrew out of the nice house in Windsor and they've sent him off to the Sandringham estate to another nice house that any one of us would be delighted to have, but they're making it sound like he's being shoved into a ghetto. Hardly. But the bottom line is this, is that while they are so focused on Andrew on a constant basis, hardly anybody is looking at the king. The king has spent almost his entire life surrounded by predators and pedophiles, the actual king. So I don't think the continuation of Andrew is a problem, because people are like, poor Charles, it puts him in a terrible position. That's his brother. No, Andrew is very useful. Andrew is usefully placed. That doesn't mean that Andrew is a good boy, not by any stretch of anybody's imagination. And between Andrew and his disgusting ex-wife, they're such seedy individuals, these people, right? Sarah Ferguson. Oh my God, I don't know if I have enough words to describe how just repugnant that woman is, right? So seedy. There's emails where she's saying to Jeffrey Epstein, just marry me. She told him how one of her daughters had returned from time away and had been shagging. Do you get that? They sent Jeffrey Epstein, who was by this point convicted of trafficking a minor, they sent pictures of their daughters. You people are weird. You people are weird. It's one thing you're hanging out with him, then sending him pictures of the type of girls that he may be interested in. So weird. They are so repugnant. Kathy, I've no idea, but does look young. Absolutely does look young. And I know what the heck is going on. What the heck is going on indeed. And you know what makes me sick about Andrew and Sarah and Peter Mandelson, who we'll get to next, right? They have condemned Epstein publicly, but they loved him as a friend privately. They loved him up. They did. Does she, Stephen? I love Intel Lady. I must see her impersonation of Sarah Ferguson. Yeah, they're all the same. And I don't know if there was some videos which were also released in this cache as well. And one of them was of Epstein being interviewed, and he was bragging about the good things he's done in this world to do with children, and about how he had given polo jabs to children in Pakistan. They might prefer food. And then he was also asked if he's the devil himself. And, you know, I mean, he's as devilish as the people that were around him. But the whole thing is absolutely awful. But there's something very serious in those files that I haven't seen any of the mainstream press commenting on. And we really need to, because it's a very serious allegation about Andrew Mountbatten. Right, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. And I'm going to quote it. It says, this is in an email, back in the 90s, Ghislaine Maxwell recruited a girl for a modeling career. Instead of modeling, she was sold as a slave for sex and torture. Prince Andrew was an accessory to her death as he tortured her and me to force her murder. Now that, obviously, that's an allegation. It's a wild allegation. Nobody has reported on it. But clearly, there is enough in those files now for Andrew to answer, not just to the US administration and to Congress, but again, for the Metropolitan Police take another look. They just have systematically refused to investigate him. And I think there's some troubling stuff there. He's being accused of being involved in the murder of somebody in these files. And again, some of these emails are Epstein related. They're not necessarily from Epstein. They're not necessarily to Epstein. But the Department of Justice saw fit to release that email. And I think that is really problematic. They all know, says shit. So very problematic. And I just think that Andrew is very useful for the royal family. He's repugnant, obviously, absolutely repugnant, but then so are most of them. And I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we allow ourselves, going back to what Neil was talking about earlier, to be distracted by what they always want us to be distracted by. So yes, absolutely. I think that Andrew Windsor must now, as a matter of urgency, be interviewed by the Metropolitan Police, but we should not see him in isolation. Yes, won't happen. Got you. Bloke Andrew's a firewall against press coverage, and I think that's a very good point. He absolutely is, Herbert. Very useful idiot indeed. Right, I want to talk about Peter Mandelson. And Peter Mandelson obviously makes an appearance, and Peter Mandelson yesterday has resigned from UK Labour. And here he is in images from the files. He looks like he's wearing a nappy. Now, Peter Mandelson, bear in mind, was a former Labour MP. He was a spin doctor, a huge architect of the new Labour project with Tony Blair. And Peter Mandelson was most recently the ambassador to America, and that was approved by Donald Trump. Well, we can see why, can't we? Because both Peter Mandelson and Donald Trump had perhaps things that they wanted to keep hidden. Perhaps that was the case. And Peter Mandelson is really, I mean, he's in a lot of trouble. It's really problematic for Mandelson. And the reason that he had to end up resigning from Labour was because there's 3 payments of £25,000 that was paid to Peter Mandelson. And I think on 1 or 2 of those payments to his husband. Peter Mandelson is somebody who will deny everything until it's absolutely proven. That's why he was so effective, a spin doctor for New Labour. And he has denied all this. He can't remember receiving the money. He can't remember where this picture was taken. That female looks young to me. And Peter Mandelson had previously said that when he was around Jeffrey Epstein, he was never around young females. Yes, Mandy is still getting airtime. The BBC up until last week, says Steve. Yes, Kathy, there was an issue with Mandelson and his mortgage. There's always been an issue with Mandelson. He's a dodgy man. He really is. But these are quite serious things. I really think he might be wearing a nappy there, though. It's just really odd imagery. And Danielle, I've covered Dr. David Kelly so much, and Gareth Williams, both of them. There are videos on YouTube, but always happy to revisit. So Mandelson, he's had to step back, and bear in mind that it was Keir Starmer, who put Mandelson up for the job, and it was Donald Trump who approved it. Well, I would say that neither Keir Starmer or Donald Trump are people with clean hands. Not at all. But that's not all. There is also Richard Branson. Now, Richard Branson, we've talked often, right? Richard Branson's email appeared, and he told Jeffrey Epstein to bring his harem with him the next time they met. And he was giving Jeffrey Epstein PR advice. Now, the language is important here. Even in jest, right, it points to a sexual conversation or observation between them. Because if Richard Branson had seen Jeffrey Epstein with his mum and grandmother, he's not going to say, bring your harem, is he? He's not. Right. So it definitely pointed to something sexual that Richard Branson was aware of. OK. And in the email sent on September the 11th, and it's very interesting. I don't know if anybody else noticed this. There's a whole plethora of emails that surfaced this weekend, and they're all based on, well, not all, a lot of them are based on September the 11th. Well, September 11th has huge significance around the world, and particularly in America, obviously, because of 9/11. But in this particular email on September the 11th, Richard Branson wrote, "It was really nice seeing you yesterday. The boys in water sports can't stop speaking about it. Anytime you're in the area, would love to see you as long as you bring your harem." And the correspondence took place 5 years after Epstein had pleaded guilty to charges of soliciting and procuring a person under the age of 18 for prostitution. So as I say, anybody in communication with him after that cannot claim to come into this with clean hands. You knew he was a nonce, but the thing is, they loved his influence. They loved his apparent generosity towards his friends. Now, these are rich people. These are independently rich people, but they do all fly together. They do all fly together. And Bill Gates, of course, he doesn't escape any of this. Bill Gates, funny as anything. It claims, let me just take this image off the screen. The Bill Gates one, the email claims that Bill Gates asked one of Epstein's advisors to provide medicine to treat a sexually transmitted disease due to sex with Russian girls. Something Bill Gates has dismissed as completely false. But is it though? Is it? I mean, no wonder Melinda French Gates, her divorce settlement from Bill Gates, was 12.5 billion agreement. You have to wonder why she got so much money. Is it because she knew where the bodies were hidden? I hope not literally. But Bill Gates, and the reason, and so the headlines all yesterday, of course, were about trying to take you away from the idea that Mossad is involved. All about Russia. The mention of supplying a Russian girl and all that It's all about Russia. And they're linking it, excuse me, to Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell, of course, was a filthy individual who ended up stealing the pensions from people at Mirror Group International. But Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, and Mossad, and they were saying, I mean, the newspapers aren't saying Mossad. I am, and anybody who's ever researched him saying that. And the newspapers saying that he was involved with Russian intelligence, which he may well have been as well. I particularly liked the meme put up by Charlotte Emma UK. Good morning to you, sweetheart. In which she said, whatever it was, Putin did it, because it's all across the press. Daily Mail, BBC, all involvement apparently to do with Putin. And I don't rule that out. Who knows? I wasn't there. I don't know. But I do know throughout my entire lifetime, whatever there is, if there's a situation that needs to be blamed on a person or a country, then it's usually Russia, and Putin is perfect for that. Security sources have said that Robert Maxwell was a Russian asset from the 1970s. And in return, they say that Maxwell laundered Russian money into the West with the help of Jeffrey Epstein. All of that's possible. What I noted about the whole, because I was like, okay, what the press is saying that this is definitely involvement of Russia. So let me look into that. And actually what you have are these series of emails where they're talking about Epstein meeting Putin. Again, the stuff that's come out isn't necessary. It's Epstein related emails. It's not necessarily from Epstein and not necessarily from the people involved, unless I say it is. So it's interesting. China is also a bogeyman. Yes, Mels, absolutely. And there was stuff that came out also, not just Russia, Mossad. Yes, fun times forever. Absolutely. 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 And I think that we can tell how captured our media is by the fact that they really don't want to say that there is Israeli involvement. I mean, it's like painful for them. Okay. And that's because captured media. And there was an email which also came out regarding the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. It was sent to an address associated with Jeffrey Epstein. And it's dated July 23rd, 2019. The subject line is Jeffrey Epstein. The email mentions the truly appalling 2019 Netflix documentary, The Disappearance of Madeleine McCann. My documentaries are much better. And it specifically refers to a segment in the documentary which discusses a past child abuse scandal. And that was at the Portuguese orphanage, the Casa Pia. It mentions allegations that American millionaires were flying into Portugal on private jets to sexually abuse children. And the author of this email suggests this information could be a line of inquiry to the recipient. The email address is Dear Sir and indicates it was directed to recipients labeled New York and Washington Field. However, when it gets onto social media, here's the thing, right? My question is how to tell me you know absolutely nothing about the Madeleine McCann case without telling me. Well, I have to refer here to the people online who are like, this is all about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell going to Portugal. No, it's not. And it's really shocking to see Liz Crokin. And Liz Crokin has done, I believe, I could be wrong, some sterling work to do with child abuse in the US, but she appears to know jack squat about the case to do with Madeleine McCann. And she posted about how Jeffrey Epstein received an email about the Netflix documentary. Well, that's already false. We don't know it was him. We know it was an Epstein-related email. So it's already false information. And she goes on to say what's super interesting is it references the episodes in the Netflix documentary that talks about how rich men from America took private jets to Portugal. And then she goes on, she says, remember a sketch of three of the suspects looked like Ghislaine Maxwell, Tony Podesta, and John Podesta. I really did expect better research from Liz than that. That's just poor research. I would stake, I'm going to do a Candace Owens here. I would stake my professional reputation on the fact that none of those individuals had anything to do with the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. And the reason that I object to her is because a lot of Americans have been running with this. And it started off with the Last American Vagabond. And I actually had him on the show and he couldn't remember, but he had originally published a blog probably about 15 years ago now, which made the claim that the Podestas were in Portugal, in Praia da Luz, at the time that Madeleine went missing. And I asked him about that and he couldn't remember it. I've never, ever been able to trace it. There is no source for that. I believe it just simply is not true. And those EFITs are actually based on the Smith family and what they saw, and particularly Daddy Smith. And I think I'm off the top of my head, he saw a man carrying a child on the night that Madeleine was reported missing, and he believed it to be 60 to 65 to 85%. He thought it was Jerry McCann. I think I got that stat right, but he believed it to be Jerry McCann. And that's actually what those EFITs are based on. A man who thought it was Jerry McCann carrying a child. It's nothing to do with the Podestas, and it's nothing to do with Ghislaine Maxwell. And the Madeleine McCann story is a story that you don't need to embellish. It's bad enough as it is. It really is. It's a cover-up. But I absolutely wager that Ghislaine Maxwell and the Podestas had absolutely jack squat to do with it. Started on forums, said Indigo Disco. It's really bad. It's really bad misinformation, because the reality is what happened to Madeleine McCann, the truth is a lot closer to home. That is the reality. And so also the Elon Musk stuff. Oh my God, that's really shown up, right? The far right. It's really shown them up. I wrote a tweet a few years back, and the tweet was about how the British far right are not interested in child abuse as such, right? They are only interested in child abuse if it's at the hands of black or brown men. Okay, I received death threats, people telling me I was wrong, but I wasn't wrong. I wasn't wrong. And so my attitude then is the same as now, and that is save your crocodile tears and go after the nonce protectors, even if they are on the same side as you. And there was this email that Elon Musk had sent to Elon Musk, apparently bought Twitter, £44 billion to give people back freedom of speech. No, it's not. It's an absolute Zionist entity now, and a protector of Donald Trump. And it was also bought to get Donald Trump into power as well. And there was one of the emails to be released was of Elon Musk, quite literally at 6 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Day, when Elon Musk is on holiday with his family, because one of his children later confirmed that this is a legit email. 6 o'clock, Christmas morning, and Elon Musk is emailing Jeffrey Epstein to get onto his island, right? Get onto his island to try and organize a play date. This is extraordinary stuff. It's extraordinary stuff. And it shows us. And so the thing is, I was waiting yesterday for the British far right, very beloved of Elon Musk, to actually come out and just say this ain't okay. Because Elon Musk then went to this whole big thing of nobody worked harder than me to get the Epstein files released. Bull. That's what I think about him. I don't like him. I don't trust him. He's not one of us. It's really a shocking stuff. Yesterday, he spent all the time artificially boosting every tweet that was defending him. And it is extraordinary, because what Elon Musk has done, Elon Musk is a white supremacist, right? That's what he is. And Elon Musk is one of those people who wants to imagine that only kind of Muslims and black men are harming children. That's what, and if he doesn't believe that, then he's covering up, because he did that tweet, didn't he, about Donald Trump being in the Epstein files, and then said that he'd gone too far, and then they made up. But the reality is that Elon Musk actually looks like he was begging his way onto the island. Actually looks like that. And one of his children has come out saying, I'm just going to speak directly. Instead of being vague and cryptic, I can confirm we were in St. Barth's at the time specified in the emails, and therefore I believe they are authentic. And so I was waiting yesterday, obviously, for the British far right, who have become so interested in child abuse, right? I was waiting for them to speak out. Well, you can imagine I waited all day. Didn't happen, because they're not interested in child abuse. They're only interested in the abusers if they fit the demographic they already hate. That's not fighting against child abuse, right? That's just bigots being given something that they can run with. So people have to know. And also, please bear in mind that Elon Musk has been previously accused of sexually assaulting multiple SpaceX employees. He was actually reported to have paid $250,000 to $250,000 to one to keep their silence. This guy is not on your side. And let me tell you something. If you consider Elon Musk to be on your side, me and you are on the same side. We are not on the same side. He is definitely one of them. He is definitely one of them. It is horrible, horrible stuff. It is outrageous, the stuff that has come out this weekend. Cannibalism, murder, paedophilia, the whole lot. And not, where's the arrest? Where's the investigations? Is astonishing stuff. Thank you, Kerry. Thank you. They're all scammers. They are all scammers. Can't believe we're on the same planet as these sickos. It's terrifying. Harvest Moon it is, but we're on the good side. And I'm just not buying it. I'm just not buying this. Hamish says, Elon is a rich kid, ketamine head. This is true. All of this is true. Very obvious to me. Absolutely. Am I Katie? Am I on a roll? Hate child abuse. And I don't care who conducts it or who carries it out. I'm after them. They are my number one enemy because children are so vulnerable. They're so defenseless. And the problem about child abuse actually makes me emotional. The problem about child abuse is it has the ability to screw up the rest of that person's life. And we don't do enough about it. Yeah, Musk does post AI porn on X. He's disgusting. He's a disgusting human being. Every now and again, people leave me comments saying, leave Musk alone, like he's some poor person who needs to be protected. So the left deep state are orchestrating it, said Hulu TV. I mean, here's the thing, just to be clear, right? They have not covered themselves in glory because all of this should have been released under Biden, shouldn't it, right? And obviously they didn't want to release it because, well, probably Bill Clinton, starters, huge involvement. Bill Clinton's huge involvement with Epstein. So the deep state are playing you. Really? Both sides. It's both sides. They're all at it. Nobody's playing me. I don't think nobody's playing me. Indigo Disco says, I'm mixed, as in mixed race, and have close-up experience of grooming gangs. I am not far right. Yes, no, you're not far right. Listen, going back to what I said earlier, we have to be able to name it, whatever it is, whether it's Epstein rape gangs or whether it's Pakistani rape gangs. We have to be able to call it for what it is because they are operating in very different ways. But it should be noted, I did not find one single Muslim in these files. And I could be wrong, but I did find a lot of Jews. So again, is Epstein very much a particular area of attack against children that is coming primarily from Jewish people? Is that what it is? Because if so, then we need to call it as well. We need to call it whatever it is, and that's just how it is. It's just how it is. Right. I want to turn to, but I just have to say, I've really had a lot of chance this weekend to think about poor Virginia Giuffre. I'm genuinely sad for her, more sad than I was before. Thank you, Tarquin. I appreciate that. I will be consistently outspoken. I'm about to be outspoken again because this picture was sent to me. Now, I was very aware of what was being said about this young lady online, and I don't like the way the far right have integrated into reasonable debate. This poor woman, now a number of you sent me an email about this poor woman. Her name is Athika Ahmed. She is a student in Wales, and she was wrongly mischaracterized as being in charge of health in Wales. And I think it was Patrick Christie. Patrick Christie is from GB News. Oh, God. Don't even get me started. But he put out a tweet about how she was in charge of health for Wales. Actually, no, she's a student and she's been volunteering to help to do with sanitary essentials in schools and public toilets. And so what you had was the gormless far right. And what they did was they leapt on it. They were like, oh, look how overweight she is. She looks like a pig. All this kind of disgusting stuff, really disgusting stuff. And I don't care who you are, whether you are Katie Hopkins or Patrick Christie's or any of those. If you are demonizing an individual like this, you are repugnant in my eyes. Repugnant. And a lot of my viewers were deeply upset that this poor woman tried to do a good thing by volunteering her services and ended up being savaged by these freakoids. And I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Poor woman. Somebody put online, this woman, a face with a black pig next to it. That's just, it's demonic, your behavior. Absolutely demonic. Stop it. Really stop it. Thank you for all the people who contacted me about that, because yes, we have problems that clearly that a lot of the population are very concerned about migration and immigration. Yes, we do. But we're still a multicultural country, and I'm bloody happy to be that. Yes, I am. Never, ever align me with those kind of people, because I'm just not like that. I'm very much in the middle. I understand that people have a genuine concern about immigration and migration, but I also understand that there are freakoid bigots at the other end of the scale who will attack good people like this who's just doing a voluntary service. And I'm not with it. I'm not with it at all. Not having it, Paul. Not having it at all. Poor woman. Try to do a good thing and get attacked by these savages online. It's absolutely disgusting. We're going to go a little bit over today, people. I want to just talk about this. This was sent to me by a viewer. And it's a book about narcissism, Voiceless No More. Now, I am not a hater per se, but if I have one type of person that I actually do genuinely hate, like truly, truly hate, it's people on the NPD, narcissistic personality disorder. They are an absolute waste of space. They are garbage people. They bring chaos and misery to the world. However, and it's always to my delight that eventually life catches up with them, and they often suffer a humiliating public downfall because they always overplay their hands. And you only have to look at the long line of famous criminals who are almost certainly narcissistic, whether that's Diddy or Weinstein or any of them, Epstein, any of them. So when a viewer sent me this book, it absolutely resonated with me. Thank you for sending it to me. I shan't give her name to avoid all manner of potential legal pitfalls for her and me, but I shall reflect on her story and what she told me because it's important. She has been touched by narcissism because her daughter's husband is one. Now, my viewer pointed me at the chapters that deals with the family court system and narcissists, and I've been dealing with the family court system for a very long time. And some of the people, the victims of the family court system, are also victims of narcissists. And now I've not had the experience myself of dealing with the family court system and narcissists, but I have dealt with narcissists a lot in my life. And I've interviewed numerous people, men and women, who have had to deal with narc ex-partners in the family court system. And it's awful. And my viewer pointed me to, for example, the smear campaigns that enable the stealing of children. Smear campaigns are used to manipulate family court systems by portraying the survivor as erratic, emotionally unstable, or vindictive. Abusers secure custody, sabotage protective parents, and coerce children into rejecting the non-abusive parent. Now, I've heard that over and over and over again. And one of the ways that they do it is by playing victims. Narcissists are class at playing victims. They're absolutely brilliant. And one of the ways they do it that's mentioned in this book, excellent book, very clear. One of the ways they do it is, for example, when a victim contacts the authorities because they're being subject to some kind of abuse, violent, physical, or whatever. And often what happens is that the narcissist has subjected the victim to something before the first responder arrives. And so what happens is the first responder arrives to find the victim in this state of madness, right? And over emotional. So they look like the problem. Whereas the narcissist has been able to gather themselves. They're calm, they're unfazed, but they're hurt. They're hurt and they are brilliant at playing the victim. And the thing is that my viewer wanted me to just kind of like have this and to talk about this because she is hurting, because she's witnessed her daughter being dragged through this situation. Narcissists in the family court system, they terrorize and damage people. Narcissists anywhere terrorize and damage people. They are absolutely parasitical in nature and they leave devastation and chaos in their wake. Unfortunately, they do also frequently escape capture and justice for their actions. But in the end, as we said today, right, the truth outruns a lie. That is a reality. And I think there is a really good argument for criminalizing these people and putting them on their own island. I mean, I really hate narcissists. They're wicked, wicked people. They're demonic. Let them destroy each other rather than innocent people walking around and going about their business. And because narcissists, what they do is beyond redemption. And this book absolutely ably catalogues it. And I think in part because the author, Daniel Ryan Kotler, it's not even a long book, but the author, Daniel Ryan Kotler, He's a best-selling author, but he's also a trauma expert with his fair share of dealing with narcissists. He definitely knows what he's talking about. And anybody who's been on the receiving end of narcissism, whether in the family court system or in a relationship or at work or whatever, this book will resonate with them. And I'm not being paid to plug it. I just thought it was very good. They are highly problematic online, Gina. And one of the reasons why I've interviewed people about this is because it's like a playground to narcissists online, right? So on social media, they can have numerous people in private messages that they're getting fuel from. These people are sick. Some can get better, I believe, if they work on it. Mr. Dunham, I think some can, but I don't think the ones that are really high on MPD, I think that people have narcissistic traits. I think in the same way as a lot of people have OCD traits, but it doesn't necessarily make them OCD. I think the same applies with narcissism, but I think once they're up on the MPD scale, I'm not sure they can change. I'm not sure, but I would like to believe so. Covert narcissists are terrible, Reba. They're absolutely terrible. These are disgusting people. And Herbert said, very few turn ethical. They're 100 times harder to save than any junkie. I have to agree. So wanted to just say that, to acknowledge my viewer, to acknowledge the pain you're going through. I absolutely get it. I am so sorry that you are essentially grieving for the process that your poor daughter is having to endure through the family court system. KR says, I believe narcs were abuse victims who didn't process abuse. Well, so the kind of school of thought is that narcs are created one of two ways. And the school of thought is you can't be born a narc, right? I don't know whether that's true or not, but that is the school of thought, and that's what studies back up. And the school of thought is that narcs are created one of two ways, and that is as children they are either neglected or they are over pampered and created as like the center of the universe, and that's how they are created. You're welcome, JB. It's so interesting, it really is. And Mels, I have to agree with you. And I've heard that before, that narcissistic tendencies have grown with social media. I agree. I absolutely agree. Yes, Stephen, it absolutely did. And just to say hello and welcome to new subscribers and new patrons. Absolutely appreciate you as ever. And hello to Kathy. Kathy said, hello there, Sonia Poulton. I've recently come across you. I'm now a subscriber. Love your truth, honesty, and no BS at all. I think that might be a sticker. Wake up, no BS. Love that. And what else to say? Well, thank you as always to everybody. A message was left by 8866 saying, hey, can anyone direct me to any videos Sonia has done about Project 2030? I can't seem to find one. I have done so many videos, like so many since 2019. I've been talking about Project 2030. We even have a kind of expression for it around here, 2030, there's that year again. But one video that may be of interest to you is when I interviewed one of the guys from Oracle Films and the guy who was formerly at Sky News, and they've made a film about Agenda 2030. So that may be of interest to you. And this is fun. Hello to Jason Rook. Jason, I bet you even forgot you'd sent me this. Somebody was suggesting that if everyone wore these, we could outwit facial recognition for £5.69. This is, of course, Groucho Marx. I think that's quite funny. Thank you, Kath. Lots of love to you. We're at 11:11. Yes, indeed, we are. Thank you, Harvest Moon. Good morning to you, Jason Rook. Good morning to you. That would be fun. Maybe we should start wearing things like that just to outwit them. Quite like that idea. And as ever, I'm a nature lover. I think everybody knows that about me. But look at this image that I captured. Absolutely love this. So there's me and the doggo. We're walking, as you do. And we came across a tree. No, we didn't. We came across a squirrel. A squirrel was running in front of us on the road and then jumped into this tree. And the tree was basically naked. You can see the tree. Oh, no, I didn't want to show that one yet. The tree is... I need a producer, and one day I will have one. But the tree is basically naked, right? Let's just see if I could show you the tree, because then I want to zoom in on that, because it's so sweet. So that's the tree, right? And the squirrel had run up it, and I'm like, well, there's no leaves. I can, even if I can't see it with my naked eye, my camera can capture it. So I took a picture, and this was the picture. Look at that baby. Look, it's staring at me and the doggo. Look at that. And I said it to my daughter. My daughter said, the squirrel looks like our dog, mum. We're all the same, really. How cute is that? Was the squirrel naked? Said Herbert. Yes. Thank you, Katie. I appreciate that. Rachel, I love it so much. Look at that little quizzical face. How adorable is that face? Just blooming love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. And good morning also to lovely Michelle Burns, who sent me a picture of her doggo, Maisie. Let's have a little look at Maisie. As I say, I always find nature to be very healing. And I love the pictures that you send me of your pets because I know how much you love them. So cute. This is Maisie. Says, meet my little Maisie, says Michelle. All 2 kilograms of her. She's only just turned 4. That is a dog that's loved. All animals need love, Regina. Yes, they do indeed. Yes, they do indeed. Love it. Absolutely love it. Oh, we're all in here in all the right way. So also thank you as ever to my donators. You people are absolute stars. Thank you on the chat today, Swiss Miss. Thank you, Kath Hutton. Thank you, Alan Adams. Thank you, John Goldsmith, Jade Torzig. Thank you, Eleanor James. Thank you all. I appreciate you. Now, I'm in a no mess kind of mood today. Now, that might be in part because it was full moon in my sun sign yesterday. So the impact of it kind of lasts for about 2 weeks anyway, right? Now, when we have a full moon in our sign, in our sun signs, it's kind of like we're in our element, right? So creative expression kind of off the charts because it's whatever that sign is associated with. Well, I'm a Leo. As I've just told you. And Leo is the only sign that is said to be ruled by the sun. And obviously it's about the height of summer. Leo is July and August. And the sun is really about self-expression, right? Shines on us on a constant basis. And it's about creativity. It's about personal power. It's about embracing your true and authentic self. And I just have to say, if you hate astrological conversations, feel free to leave now. I would love you to stay. Yes, I would. I've been studying astrology since my 20s. And I'm not talking about kind of like the stuff that you see in newspapers and what's going to happen today or anything like that, because you can't. It's just a lot of guesswork. But what I'm really interested in is how the time of the year often has some kind of impact on our characters and the way that we are. But what I'm also aware of is that very famous expression, and that is the stars incline, they do not impel. In other words, there are times that are better than others, that are more conducive to certain situations than others, but we've still been given free will. And I love it. And a full moon in Leo, I definitely feel like I've come into my power. And for many, it's like a cosmic wake up call. Because the one thing about Leos is we're not slow in coming forward, right? Sometimes we're accused of being too loud, too noisy, too in your face, overconfident, all those things. Well, you can harness all those things for yourself, because it's not just impacting people born in Leo season. This impacts everybody. And the thing about Leo is that it's said to govern the heart, right? But what it does is the energy that has kind of been imbued in this time is it will enable you to act from a place of passion and sincerity rather than overthinking. We are not overthinkers for the most part. For the most part, we're not. We see something, we know it has to be done, we get onto it. So my kind of feeling about this season, this period, is about expressing yourself. And I heard a quote from Judge Judy. I've always liked Judge Judy. I know she can be a bit problematic in her own ways, but in terms of like being a TV show, I've always found her very entertaining, and I've learned a fair bit about law from her as well. And one of the things that she said was to find out really what you should be doing, and and where you can excel in the world, is find something that you're adept at and which you can earn an income from. And then she said, you'll never have to work another day in your life because you will be naturally happy and excited doing what you do. It won't feel like work. Well, I can honestly tell you that even though what I do around here is absolutely work, it doesn't feel like it, because I love doing this. I love rocking up every Monday and Friday to be here with you. This is literally my favorite job ever. And I've done some great jobs that I've really enjoyed, but I love this because this has been an opportunity for me to express myself without somebody going in my ear. You can't say that, shouldn't say that, blah, 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 blah. And so I wanted to talk really just a little bit about expressing yourself and doing what you're good at and how to get to that point. Some people are like, I'm 40, I don't even know what I want, or I'm 60, I don't even know what I want. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. First of all, start reflecting on what you've actually accomplished in this life. Review past work or projects where you achieved good results. Identify your strengths that way. Ask for feedback from other people. Don't be afraid of that, but also be careful about asking for feedback too early, because you don't want people to interrupt your creative process. Test new areas. Get out of your comfort zone, but align with what matters to you. Align with your goals. Okay, so I align with my goals because I hate bigots. And I hate child abuse. I hate corruption. So I'm aligning with my goals in all manner of different ways. That's how I align with my goals. And if you want to learn how to express yourself better, be direct, right? Call a cow, a dog, a donkey, or whatever, right? Just be direct. Start with the main point to avoid over-explaining. Keep details concise. Use tools if necessary to find out more about yourself. Journal, paint, sing. Physical activity can release emotions. And that's what we're kind of doing here. Creativity a lot of the time is about capturing the release of emotions, which is good. There are so many benefits that come from expressing yourself and not hiding your light under a bushel, as the expression goes. Mental health will improve, even though I've just said I'm not going to use the expression mental health, but it will. Your psychology will improve. You will build deeper connections, and the self-discovery will be phenomenal. So I think if there's ever a time which is absolutely ripe for you to show the world what you're made of, what you want to express, now is the moment to do it. You deserve it. You deserve all that and more. This was the full moon that I captured. I don't know, what's that green thing? Anyway, there was the full moon. It was beautiful. It was beautiful and it was bright and I loved it. I love full moons. I love do you, Harvest Moon? Be your creator, Sasha. Absolutely. Ask the right people for feedback. Rachel, this is really key, right? Because not everyone has your best interest. Some people are jealous. They'll give you wrong advice. What else? What have we got here? My Bessie in childhood was a fantastic Leo, says Summer Breeze. Well, we are fantastic for the most part, although if you find an a-hole Leo, watch out, they're horrible. So thank you. Finding yourself through integrated psychology is the ultimate accolade, says Herbert. Lens flare, is that what it is, Richie? So you tell I'm not a photographer. I just want to thank you all for being here today. We've been full on as ever. These are all the people who contribute to Wake Up, and I appreciate you greatly. And it's a basic picture, Glennis. I'm not a photographer, but I just like being out there and I like picking up the vibes and I liked feeling it. And of course, I'm going to end on a quote because that's what we do around here. And it is, our self-expression is meant to be a manifestation of the silence in our hearts. I love that. Have a beautiful week, you lovely people. You lovely, lovely people. I will see you on Friday. Thank you, SMG, and all of you. And I wish you a great week. I'm just seeing some great comments coming in that are about earlier in the stream. And I'm not going to go back to them, but they're great. And I will read them later. Take good care, everybody. Have a fantastic week. Lots of love to you.